Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Builder Spotlight, a monthly interview with luthiers from all over, found exclusively at acoustic.coffee. For our first episode, I'm delighted to be talking with Richard Hoover, founder of Santa Cruz Guitar Company. So grab a cup of your favorite coffee, and we'll spend a little time with Richard, one of the world's most accomplished luthiers.
Mr. Hoover here now. I'm going to get the information on H162 for you. I'm going to get that to you, Richard.
Okay.
That's the one you wanted to talk about. So, Rich, it was a pleasure.
Likewise, Rob. Thanks so much.
Let's get Richard in the seat here and make sure everything looks good.
Hey, it's been a long time.
It has been a real long time, Richard. How are you?
You know, things are going our way.
That's
We've
great.
survived.
Let's make you look a little taller.
Okay, I got to get taller here.
Framing is important, Richard. Framing is important.
Yeah. How long ago is it you came through here?
Oh my goodness. I wish I could remember. My brain doesn't work that way, but I will.
That's okay.
I'm going to take a wild guess because I know which company I was with. So I'm going to say it was maybe 9 or 10 years.
Oh man, time flies.
It does fly.
We had some fun. I remember that. Amazing. I know that guitar. Rob just handed me paperwork on a guitar that I guess we're going to talk about. And it's like people go, "You remember the guitars?" I say, "You'd recognize your own kid in the choir if you heard it."
I'm touched and honored to be able to have number 162. So I know your hands must have touched it at some point.
Oh man, that's yeah, you bet. Back then, this is the one that Rob just brought me is H162, and this says 492. That because you bought it used, correct?
I did. I bought it from the gentleman who was the founder of the ad agency that I worked at the time, passed away. And I was fortunate enough to acquire 3 guitars. 2 of them were John Zeidler's and one of them was yours.
Oh yeah, John was a dear friend and one of my favorite guitar makers of all time for his brilliance and genius in his work.
Certainly was. Here's how I'd like to start. I'm asking everyone because our journeys have been so different. Walk us through how it all began for you. How did you become enamored with or interested in this thing we call lutherie?
I can't do this without giving a few credits, and one of them is my father, who was back before franchises. If you were going to open a stationery store, a drugstore, or a liquor store, you came up with your own presentation, graphics, signage, etc. Nobody's going to do that for you. And that's what he did. He designed really store interiors. He made shelving and the graphics. So he worked in wood, metal, foam, plastic. And I watched him do that, throughout my childhood, and really, really talented craftsman. So one thing, he was my father, so I was absolutely disinterested in what he did, but it rubbed off on me nonetheless. And we made our own toys. I got things to take apart and figure out how they worked. So I had a really good advantage in a mechanical upbringing. My mother was a teacher and a reference librarian, and she was a superstar. People came to her and to get references and books back before the internet. My mom was really literally the Google of the day. And so when I got my first guitar, and my motivation for that was to impress a girl, I was sitting on the curb one time waiting for her to come home from school, and it crossed my mind, somebody makes these. How in the world do they do that? And I thought, if I could make a guitar, I could do everything I liked at once. I love everything about the guitar. Wouldn't that be a blast? So I proceeded to take that guitar apart. It was a Harmony, all mahogany, like OM shape, maybe H150. And when my mother saw that I'd taken it apart, she said, I think the best thing we could do now is to get you the books that would show you how to put this back together. Right. So crediting my father, it didn't even cross my mind not to take it apart and try to figure out how it worked. And credit my mother for sending me on the path that determined my career. And not just Luthery, but our style of Luthery. So she was a formidable researcher, and she couldn't find anything in print on steel string guitars. What she found is some things in Spanish and French on classical, which didn't interest me. But all the stuff, the bulk of information was on violins. And so, I conceded to read everything I could find about violins. And that was the beginning of my approach to Luthery. I didn't know you could just assemble a guitar out of dimensional parts and it would sound good enough you could write a song and change the world. I thought that a guitar had to have the same sophistication, sonority, and power that a violin represented, and that's how I started building guitars.
That's fantastic, and I love the credits. Well deserved. The journey that you've been on and the success that you've had with Santa Cruz. What was the most challenging part when you started building, or is it different today?
Practice is a remarkable thing. In fact, it's a miracle. What you do the first time can seem not only incomprehensible, but impossible to accomplish. And after you've done your 10,000th, you just think everybody knows how to do this from the very beginning. So let me put it like this. When I started building, a quick story here. My D28 got stolen. I went to a little pawn shop to try to get a loan to get a new guitar. And the guy who was the manager there was a classical builder. And he allowed me to come over to his house and learn the fundamentals of guitar building, which I was already, hell bent on. And with that, he didn't know anything about steel string guitars. So what I had to learn how to do were things today that makers don't even have to even think about because the information's already available. And that would be like, how do you know where to put the fret slots? There's nothing at this time, there's no videos, they don't exist. There's nothing in print really on guitar making. Soon there would be like Irving Sloane's book would come out and things like that. But Guild of American Luthiers didn't exist. So I had to figure out how you calculate that. And I did the math for fret slots. I sure wouldn't want to do that over and over again. The other one was the steel string sides are not like a classical. The classical sides in essence are parallel, the top and the back. So you just make a big rectangle and bend them and put the back and the sides on it. The steel string guitar is more of a shape, not true radius. And the shape of the side, when you lay it out in a template, it looks really goofy. But how do you get that side shape to support your back and the radius is the backs to have the guitar look right? Where do you go for that? That was hard. Seriously, it was hard to figure out how to draw a template for the back that once bent would take the 12-foot radius of the side braces side to side and fit and look right. Yeah. And that was really a big deal. So a lot of the things we take for granted in guitar making now, because there's templates and predetermined measurements for when you're going from scratch to invent it, it's just a big headache. You got to be really hell-bent to accomplish your goal there to go through that. So of course I did what was necessary and made templates for frets, templates for sides, learned how to accommodate if there was going to be a cutaway, etc. And today it's a no-brainer. We don't even think about it. We just draw the side from a template. So that's not quite as thrilling maybe as some, but to me it was a huge challenge to make that transition.
But now the second part of that question in your journey, what would you identify now as, the challenging part of the business or the process?
Well, this is funny. I know we want to talk about guitar making. The challenging thing is the paradigm shift in beginning, people that want to start at an entry level. People have been to maybe Roberto Vinn or Red Wing or through Brian Gallup's excellent program, and they want to make a career out of it. Um, but they don't come from a background of mechanical reasoning, engineering fundamentals, or the stuff that you learn as a kid if you made your own skateboards, repaired your bike. We have different values now, different priorities, and people don't learn those kind of skills necessarily, but they're still just as passionate about building a guitar, and they want to start from that point of view. And with their entry level guitar building, they have to also get fundamentals like, what's a siphon, what's centrifugal force, something tightens to the right and loosens to the left. So the biggest challenges are in training people in thinking with cause and effect. In order to achieve a goal in Lutherie. People, younger people today are really inquisitive. They're not inclined to accept things as absolute or truths. They're really questioning, inquisitive, but it's a big challenge to mentor people and teach them how to build an accumulation of knowledge, do comparative analysis, and become a luthier as opposed to someone that can just assemble a guitar that looks pretty good, because they're really two different things. Hope that's not too abstract.
No,
I
it's
know
not
you're looking
abstract at
for,
all. No, not at
good.
all, Richard. Not at all. In fact, I love how you just described life before Google.
Yeah, amen.
Right.
Amen.
So
That, they said that was my mom, life
well,
before Google.
yeah, you have to go find it, and you learn by doing. And I've always used the phrase learning moments. Learning moments, in a previous interview that I had was, no one taught me not to saturate the very, very curly koa before I bend it on the bending iron, because it's a very easy way to ruin a very expensive piece of wood. So
Yeah, the good lesson in cause and effect, and I'm glad you remembered that.
and thinking about all the wood that you've sourced and touched and fabricated into wonderful instruments, what's your favorite part of
My favorite part of building or my favorite wood? I'm sorry, I missed that.
the favorite part of the building process? I'll get to the woods later. Yeah.
Yeah, I love bending wood. Um, it's like each piece has a different personality, and you can read a lot into it by looking at it, feeling it, assessing it before you start out. But to successfully bend a piece of curly koa or maple, or God help you, quilted babinga, or even worse, the tree mahogany. Um, it's not for the faint of heart. Right? You can burn through hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars in a hurry with that. So I just really like the flow and the rhythm and the non conscious thinking that goes on when I do that process of bending wood. It's real primal. I get a lot of gratification out of it. I also always really love assessing the top woods, because we don't build to dimensions, we build to frequencies. So from matching up the spruce based on its potential, thicknessing it not to a dimension, but again to a frequency and a deflection, and then bracing that, carving the braces to get harmony, which will give us sustained complexity of overtones. Those are all things that are a real gratifying process. And I've done it so many times. I can also do it without my slow thinking conscious mind burdening me with maybe there's a better way or what if. I can do it on not autopilot in the sense of being disinterested, but I know what to do when problems present themselves. So that's part of the magic of being able to control the sound of an instrument. But it's not the only part. But it's the assessment of the wood all the way to having a top that is going to give you a great sounding guitar in the objective senses. By that I mean great sustain, great sonority, great complexity of overtones and things like that. I love that part of the process.
That's fantastic. So for our listeners and viewers, Richard, the voicing of the tops, the soundboard, which some have said is really the heart of the instrument in terms of the performance, and the rest is really more aesthetics. But when you look at the voicing, Some people may play or build arch tops versus flat tops. And I think many
Mhm.
people understand that the arch tops are dimensioned to different frequencies and pitches at varying points in the instrument. When you look at your flat tops, are you thicknessing perhaps maybe differences? We were trying to avoid trade secrets conversations, but is for you, is the voicing magic really in the bracing, or is it a combination of both the top thicknesses and varying thicknesses and the bracing?
That's a beautiful question to unpack there. And I mean that in a flattering way. There's a lot there. So let me preface this with saying that we're open source. I don't have any trade secrets. I'll answer any question that a luthier has to help them dance their cause, because my goal is to have better guitars and better music in the world, not to be successful at somebody else's expense. This was hard won, a lot of study, a lot of practice, and a lot of beneficial help from other people that were very giving, both in violin and guitar making. And it really is the secrets of Stradivarius, the school of Amati, and how they went about things. And it's very different than most guitar building. And what it was, I already said this, it's assembling the instrument of frequencies rather than dimensions. There's no magic formula of dimensions that's going to give you a good sounding guitar. The reason is wood in itself is so varied in densities that 10 pieces of the same wood, exactly the same size, maybe even cut from the same board, are going to ring at a random frequency. And when you put those together as dimensions, you're throwing rocks at a piano and you'll get whatever you get. Everything from vibrations that cancel each other out. The guitar sounds horrible. But again, if you throw enough rocks at a piano, like in factory building, every once in a while you'll hit a chord, and that explains the great sounding guitar out of a bunch of them. So you can also do that on purpose, and that's what the violin masters did, is in tuning their components, and then again the instrument as a whole. They were able to get a consistent sound of the things that are the always good or bad, and that is sustain complex development of overtones. Then in guitar making, I mean, violins, they want them to all be the same. In custom guitar making, you also want to be able to deal with those personal choices like EQ, tone, which is bright or dark, and projection and presence. And all those can be manipulated, but the fundamental of it is having a guitar whose components and airspace are in complementary frequencies in tune. Otherwise, it'll fight itself and sound poor. So that's a mouthful, but that's how we build, and that's how the violin makers build. To develop the ability to suss that out as you're dealing with wood and so forth, you're not going to do it in a lifetime on your own. You need people that will share information and mentorship to get that. Here's the secret to success with guitar making, and this is why Yamaha can sell 1 million guitars a year, is any guitar, no matter how cheaply you make it, is a miracle sounding thing. It's so pleasing. You can write a song and change the world, or you can attract a mate for life playing that guitar. It doesn't need to be super sophisticated. So they can sell 1 million guitars a year just putting together this formula of dimensions and get a low price. For us luthiers, it's unfortunately a little bit more involved, and that's what that explanation was. And that's the part I like the most.
So thanks, Richard. That I've heard you say in previous talks, luthery is not efficiency, and that's certainly truth to that. So let me ask you then, now, just from a preference standpoint, just kind of
Sure.
a little more fun in its tone of the question. There's two parts to this question. What are your favorite woods to build with? And the second part of the question is, without getting into, for the layperson, give me your description of what a perfect guitar is.
Okay. As far as the woods, this is something I learned from Dear Abby. I love all my children. I just love them each differently. I can be fickle. In other words, I'll discover a new wood to luthery, and I get enamored of it. but I do have my personal preferences. So first, let's do this fundamental statement. Aside from all of the forum opinions and gossip, what wood does to the sound of the guitar is it affects the tone, that scale of bright, clear, and articulate to warm, rounded, and blended. And it's not a good or bad. If you play a style of music where you want the audience to hear every note you play and all the nuance you put into it, a back and sides like Cocobolo or Maple and a top like Adirondack or a European Spruce are going to give you that clarity. If you want a rhythm singer songwriter accompaniment where you're not showing off single line leads, mahogany to Indian rosewood and Sitka spruce or cedar or so forth are going to give you that tonality. Woods do not affect bass and treble. There's not a bassy wood and a trebly wood. What people are confusing is tone, bright versus dark, not bass versus treble. And if I said that on the internet, I'd never get off the internet, for the arguments about how Brazilian rosewood is how you get a good bass. That's, I'm answering as best I can in terms of acoustic physics, because opinions, go on the forums and get that. That's not what I'm giving. And that's my experience too. So what my favorite woods are the woods that please me and my playing style. They're not the best woods. So koa and mahogany are my favorite back and side woods for my playing style, because I'm playing a lot of different kinds of things. I don't want a super bright guitar. I don't want a super warm and dark guitar. And those two woods will give you kind of the midpoint in clarity in the instrument. And then for a top, I'm more and more leaning towards redwood as my personal choice. Because I'm afraid I'm biased because I have such an association with the environment and the tree and so forth. So I'm a little bit jaded. It used to be Sitka spruce, but there could be real differences piece to piece.
Oh, sure.
How's that for a
Yeah,
bias?
no, sure. Look, it's like asking somebody what their favorite ice cream is, right? So there's no wrong answer to it. Everybody has different feelings. But as a builder, I certainly respect and appreciate your ability and sensitivity to each of the woods perform differently and yield different sounds. So it's not certainly not a right or wrong, but I also got a little chuckle about your reference to forums on the internet and kind of poking the bear, so to speak. So
Oh, it's great fun if you have the time for it. But your analogy is perfect. Woods are like flavors or colors. There's no right or wrong. There's, of course, there's woods appropriate for guitars and ones that aren't, but it's up to your personal taste.
So the closing question really is not to mimic what you shared in terms of your journey, but a young person walks into your shop and is inspired. What would you say to that person? And if you could impart words of wisdom to get them excited and not intimidated, what guidance would you give that person?
I'd start out with this, is that guitar making has been a beautiful thing for me. It's created a vehicle that I can really tell the story I want to tell to people and do the right thing as a human being. Everything that's really important to any of us is, why am I here? What should I do? And am I doing it right? And guitar making has been a way not only to enjoy a right livelihood, but to learn the lessons where I have something to offer to other people in just tips for living and how we get through this, wonderful comedy. God has a great sense of humor, and it's not easy to do anything. So when it comes to guitar making, it's been really gratifying for me. And there's a lot of that is total serendipity. There's a lot of talented people. There's a lot of people way more talented and smarter than me. So I don't take a lot of credit in that regard. And this is really a talk to a young person. So when you go into this, you have to decide really importantly, answer yourself, what are your motives, right? Is it a fun thing to do? Well, get a kit, make a guitar, see if it's sustainable, see if you enjoy it. If you do, let's go further. And I'm always happy to answer questions, maybe even give you a job. And with that, do you want to make a living on it? That's the biggest question. If you want to turn it into your livelihood, you've got to use your head more than your heart, or you'll never make it. When I started, the odds of succeeding were maybe 1 in 36 people I'd ever heard of that built guitars. What do you think it is today? 1 to 3.5 million?
Not sure. That's a great question.
I don't either. I don't either.
I haven't seen any analogs or research on what the luthier market actually is. And that's spanning, professional to hobbyists. And I love how you described that. The path is different. But yeah, there's a lot of learning that goes into that. I've never built 4 guitars at one time. I decided, well, I'll try 4. If I make 1 neck, I make 2 necks. I make 3 necks, I make 4 necks. Put them all together later. But the one that I really was, excited about, I dropped the top and ended up, damaging the spruce. And I went to Austria to source the top. There's a wonderful gentleman out there that I was in his barn and holding all this Italian spruce and tapping it, and
smells good in there, doesn't it?
It smells wonderful. And anyway, so look, that's not a guitar that's going to be sold to anybody, but there's a lot of wonderful choices. There's wonderful builders across the world that people can choose from.
Well, if I can, add a note of humility to this, start with humility and then I'll boast, is that the first guitars that I made on my own, even up to the first guitars we made as Santa Cruz Guitar Company, wouldn't stand a chance in the modern market. Sound-wise, function, durability, it was all there, but the designs were lumpy, the craftsmanship was not practiced, and you just go like, oh, that looks like a beginner guitar. You can't monetize that kind of thing today.
Yeah.
What's happened over the next 50 years is the evolvement of the craft, people's craftsmanship, and we've got to a level now that I'll make this statement: we can build a guitar that would stand up to any individual builder in the world today. But that's 50 years of practice to do that. That's not because I'm a special guy or have something that somebody else doesn't have. I just stuck to it for 50 years, and of course I'm an expert by default. Not because I'm smart, I just kept doing it. Practice got us to where we are.
Well, thank you, Richard. Until next time.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on Builder Spotlight. Be sure to sign up at acoustic.coffee, and we'll send you a notice when the next episode is ready. Until then, happy brewing, happy building, happy strumming.